Hello and welcome to R&B Raise My Bar. We are so excited to be able to come to you today to talk about some very important things that we want to just take into consideration during this very unusual time. I've got some special guests here. We have a special guest with us that hasn't been seen before on R&B, but she to be honest, she's been in the background the entire time making things happen, and that is Miss Casey Yee, and of course my lovely, gorgeous, amazing co host, Mr. Alfredo Lewis. So, welcome, Alfredo and Casey.
Thank
Hi, Sherry.
you. Hi.
Hi, Casey.
Hi, Alfredo. Long time no see.
Yeah, I know. It's good to see you on this side of the camera for once. You look
Thank
lovely
you.
today.
Thank you. Thank you. I did my, I'm in quarantine. I've been in my natural state, which is no makeup, hair in a bun. So, it feels good to look a little what I think people would consider normal.
Casey, you always look lovely. Casey has, like I said, been working really hard. Casey's role is to head up all digital education initiatives. And in this crazy time where we wanted to bring you tons of education, facts, just things to help you, we relied very heavily on Casey, who found ways to do that very efficiently, effectively, and all while learning new platforms and doing her regular job. Casey is a hairdresser, and we want to learn a little bit more about her because she has weathered some very stressful times in the past and has been able to see the other side of that. And we know that she's got some great advice for us as we try to understand how to navigate the future. So, Casey, tell us a little bit about your hairdressing background.
Oof. Okay. Where do I start? I have been doing hair for, 14 years. So but it almost feels like I was that kid that was doing hair, like my mom was a hairdresser. I was playing with her doll, Lucy. I'll never forget her mannequin. So like 80s, early 90s, I was still playing with hair, her doll, had no idea what I was doing, but it's fine. Then I was always like that kid in school that was like, oh, I just went to Walgreens and I bought this box. Can you color my hair? And I'm like, yeah, I got you. No clue what I was doing, right? But so even though I've been licensed for 14 years, it feels like I've just always done this. I think a lot of hairdressers feel that way. They've always just kind of gravitated towards it. But yeah, I started in 2006, which was an interesting time. It feels like it was so long ago, but if you think about all the things that have happened since 2006, there's been like just a roller coaster of everything. We went through the real estate market crash. I moved to a different country. I moved to New York City. I started working with you. So a lot of really good things. But I say that, the day that I told my mom that I wanted to leave, because I was a biomedical sciences major in college, and the day that I told her that I wanted to leave college and go to hair school, she laughed at me and I cried because I was like, this is all I want. And it's, now she's like, I could never imagine you doing anything else. And I'm like, that this is so true. Even though I don't work behind the chair anymore, like there's nothing that I would rather do is, serve this industry and do it. So I'm just really thankful to be able to be here with you and to have had the journey that I have over the last 14 years.
So, Casey, I know some
Love that.
very personal and intimate details about you and your life, but I don't think I ever knew that your mom was a hairdresser.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either, and I also didn't know that you changed your profession as far as where you were going to go. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, my mom was
Yeah,
a hairdresser, and she wasn't honestly a successful hairdresser. And she was in cosmetology school when I was little. I remember going, and being super, infant, not an infant, obviously, but like really young, and picking her up from, cosmetology school with my dad. And she went and she worked at a J.C. Penney salon for a while. And, but it wasn't easy. She had a young kid, there was, she was moving, we moved back home to a different area in Florida, whatever. And so that's why she said no for me, because she was like, you're not going to make any money and you're not going to do well. And so I was in school to be a doctor, and she was like, absolutely not. You are going to be a doctor, friends. Like, no. And so then I like started crying, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're actually serious about this. You never cry. So she let me go to
Well,
cosmetology school. Yeah, here we are.
well, we're lucky and we're grateful that you made that decision and that you stood behind your desire to do such a thing. And you went to beauty school, you started being a cosmetologist, a hairdresser at 2006. So I can picture you going out on the floor. Somewhere in beautiful Florida, the sun shining, getting some clients, doing lots of highlights.
Yeah.
And then we had some economic financial disturbances here in the US. So tell us a little bit about what that journey was like for you.
Oh, gosh. So let me set it up. So I went to hair school in 2006, and in Florida, it takes about 10 months if you go full time. So I started in January and finished in October. So I got my license at the end of that year. So 2007 was like, I was building my clientele. I was doing really well. I communicated really well with my clients. I was always like asking for referrals and stuff, which, I know we'll talk a little bit more about later. So I felt like in 2008, I was a new hairdresser still. I'd really only been like developing my business for maybe a year and a half, I think, by the time things really took a turn. But I was new. So it was still like, it was just scary. And all of a sudden in 2008, in Florida, especially when the real estate market crashed, and I joke, but not really, that I feel like, I was booked all the time. For a new stylist, I was doing pretty good. And I joke because it literally collapsed from underneath me, seemingly overnight. It felt like all of my clients called each other the night before and were like, hey, so we're not going to go see Casey anymore, right? Okay, cool. So just so that we're all like confirmed and on the same page, we're all boycotting. I went in from a full book to nothing. And I didn't, I was only 21 at the time. And I didn't really understand like what like an economic downturn could mean for the business. And, I was, brand new. I felt like I was like brand new in the adult world, and it was scary. So, and when you work, I was in a booth front salon, and I was paying $300 a week to sit on my butt and do a big fat nothing. So I had to get really creative and just start working with clients and trying to get them in and really focus on communicating with them, because the last thing I wanted was for there to be this dark time between us, and then now they feel like they can't come back, so it was really about like, rooted in communication.
Okay, so so the biggest challenge, the reason they didn't call each other, right? They didn't call each other.
That's why
I joke. So what specifically was the challenge for them?
I left that key detail out. Thank you. So the challenge was that a lot of my clientele were, doing really well. And they were either in the real estate business, their husbands were in the real estate business, their partners, whatever it was. And when the real estate market crashed or like real estate developers, I had a lot of clients who were real estate developers, and nobody had any income, because now they were flipping houses so much that their houses went from, they were upside down on their loans and everything, but the bubble burst essentially. So they went from, one of my clients actually, I'll never forget, she sat down in my chair and she was like, Casey, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And again, I'm like 21, 22, so I have no clue, right? And I asked her, I said, what do you mean? And she said, my house, because she had 5 houses that were on the market. And she said, my house payments are $20,000 a month between all of them, right? And that was because of the loans. And she's like, and they're on the market, but because of what crashed, they're worth less than what I owe on them. So there's nothing that I can do. And it was that, people had no money, none. Mm-hmm. And so when you have, an income situation where you need to cut, hair is unfortunately, looked at to be a luxury or something that you can space out. It's, if you have to choose between food and a haircut, you're going to choose the food. So it was, I know they didn't call each other, but that's why, like I say, I joke about it, because it was literally that sudden. They were gone.
Yeah, I think it's such an important detail. So, for those that don't know or maybe don't live here in America, there was this period leading up to 2008 whereby they had special loans for homes, right? Special mortgages. There were the balloon loans, etc. That made it very attractive to be able to purchase a home. And so people were doing what Casey is suggesting, which is flipping them. They buy them for a low price, put a little bit of money into them, and then sell them for much more, whatever the market value of where that house was. And because then inevitably it turned sort of upside down with how lucrative or how attractive those loans were, then this is what happened, the economic crash for us here in the US. And it was devastating. I actually moved from California to New York because I started working in the international role in 2009, and I lost $80,000 because I needed to sell. I wasn't in a position. I lived in a trailer on the beach in California, but I couldn't rent the trailer out. That was the trailer park rules. Yes, it was a trailer park. Yes, I lived in a trailer. But I redid it. It looked great, but lost $80,000. So here you've got these clients who have an insurmountable amount of debt. They're struggling with trying to identify how to put food on the table. Right now, it's not about debt so much, but it is about the struggle of income and being able to sustain our livelihoods. So tell us, what did you do to sort of help those who were having this financial struggle out? Because obviously you came out on the other side of it. What were some things that you implemented to be able to make that a lucrative, or at least a time to get you through everything?
Yeah, there was so many things, and I mean, you're absolutely right. Right now, we are not facing like the same exact situation, but I know that so many people out there can relate because it was overnight. I'll never forget when the day that we left the office and we thought we were going to work from home for one day. I haven't seen either of you guys in over a month and we don't know when we're coming back. So it's scary, and it's a time that people are really looking and they're tightening up, the purse strings or your bootstraps or whatever it is that you're tightening. And it's the only thing I can say is that it starts with the communication piece of it. I noticed this drastic shift in my book and I was like, okay, I'm going to call them and be like, what is going on? Are you okay? Why, and because I mean, these were clients, they were pre-books, they were regulars, like they were scheduling their appointments out for the year. So the fact that they all just disappeared was kind of like, okay, something is not right, So I started out by calling them one by one and just, letting them know that I noticed that they had canceled their appointment and that, I know that was very unlike them. Are you okay? Can I do anything for you? And then that's when the story started to come in. And the first, couple ones, again, like I was in my very early 20s. So I was kind of like, I don't even know what a mortgage is. I mean, I did, but I was like, I don't have one. I don't, never owned a house, whatever. And so I started to notice a pattern and I thought, okay, so if this small population of people that I have contact with are being affected by this, then it's safe to assume that even if I said, all right, well, forget you guys, it's fine, I'll just build a new clientele, it's pretty safe to assume that the new clients would also be somewhat affected by this, right? And also, who wants to, once you have such a solid business, you don't ever want to start over again, right? A clientele is something that you put a lot of work into. You get the right referrals, you get the right clients. And so that's like one of the worst things is, as a hairdresser, is having to start over and rebuild that whole thing. So I decided that it was worth it for me to invest in my existing clientele. And what I mean by that is I worked with them. The first thing I did was I did a lot of hair for free. To be honest, I, would offer them, okay, I 100% get it. I just want to make sure that you're taken care of, because for me, it was an investment to do their hair 1 or 2 times for free, knowing that would build loyalty for life, because it's taking care of people when they don't know how to take care of themselves. And it was working with them or taking reduced payments and letting them know, it's fine if you can just pay me back, or pay for the color, $20, $25, whatever it is. I will donate my time for you for free. It's fine. Whatever you can pay is awesome. And I still talk to a lot of those people today because of what we went through then. So it's about just like prioritizing, what would you rather do? And is it realistic to start over?
So I love that you're investing in the relationship with them. I think that makes a lot of sense. I would say, so Alfredo, how long have you been a hairdresser?
So I got my license from the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology in 1993. So it'll be 30 years coming up in 2023 that I've been a hairdresser.
Amazing. And yeah. On the opposite, it's longer for me, Casey. We just look really young. I know you think that we're all the same age, but we're not. So Alfredo, you then were in California, and the same, very similar situation to Florida. Lot of flipping of the houses, lot of, purchasing houses that were maybe traditionally beyond somebody's means, but because of, again, the loans and the mortgages that were being offered, it made it attractive and feasible. And I know many of people who were in sort of over their heads. And so you had to have gone through as somebody in LA, something very similar. What was that time period like for you?
Well, for me, like to go with, it was so interesting to learn about Casey. I went to college in 1990. I lasted for 2 weeks and I told my parents I'm quitting college and I want to be an actor. I'm going to move to Hollywood to be an actor. So they were like, wow, like what, acting didn't go well. I came up with the idea I'm going to do hair so I can do hair for movies. I thought it would be a networking opportunity to get into the business. But I ended up falling in love with hair, especially hair color. And acting went out the window. I just had no interest anymore in the acting part. And I just went headfirst into hair. So from 1993, I assisted for 3 years. I went on the floor in 96. And I had built a pretty substantial clientele. I was a color specialist. I know people still specialize today. But back then where I worked, it was very common that salons made you choose back then to be a cutter or a hair colorist, and color was like my more passion that I was more interested in, so I went with color. However, I loved giving beautiful bouncy blowouts, and back then there wasn't the blow dry bars that you see today, and I built a really strong clientele by having my regular clients come in for blowouts as well. So I was doing color, but I would have at least 5 clients a day that came in for their weekly blowout. And I charged $75. I built it up to $75 a blowout at that time. So I had a full clientele. I was booked probably almost 2 weeks in advance, because if you think by 2008, I've been doing hair for quite a while. So I had built a nice clientele. I was doing very well. When the crisis hit, the first thing that went was the blow dry. So if you want to do the math, I was sitting here writing, so I was thinking how much. I knew it was substantial, but it's been a long time. I was losing almost $2,000 a week right off the bat. 90% of my clients stopped getting their weekly blowout. I mean, they said, that to them was such a luxury to come in once a week and get a blow dry for the week for work or for whatever. Sometimes it was just women that wanted to feel beautiful. They wash their hair, sometimes once a week. They keep that blowout. If you do it right, that it lasts.
Honey, you were in Beverly Hills. They wanted to look good for the party.
Yeah, they did, but it was.
Let's be honest.
And at the same time, Sherry, like you said, you moved to New York. I happened to change salons right before this hit, which is also something that, you lose, you always are going to lose. You're going to lose and gain. But what happened was I had lost, and then that happened. So to gain, it was no more weekly blowouts, and then also moving salons. So I took a huge hit. If you do the math on that, let's say it's even $1,500, that's about $6,000 in revenue a month that was no longer there right away. So what happened for me at the time is I was like, I have to do something. I have to get smart. Like, so I started, it was such a controversial thing, but I'm sure you guys remember Groupons.
Yes.
And I remember there was a whole,
when I moved here.
I remember there was a whole movement of the hairstylists at the time of like, don't do Groupons, don't support Groupons. They're awful. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, but everybody, even my own clients that had been with me since the 90s were like, you know what, I'm right now, I don't have the money I had before. So I want you to know I'm going to try somebody new today. I saw a Groupon that's offering a color cut and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and they're asking me what their formula is. And these are people that I was so close to. And so I was like, you know what, I need to figure something out. So what I did in my salon is I started a referral program. That was one thing that I did. So I gave $25 for every referral. So some of my clients would make it a game. They'd try to send me 4 of their friends or more to get $100 off or $150 off for their next service. And it worked. It was like a game to them. And I kept on their record card how many clients came in with the card. I made all these little cards that I printed out and cut on my printer. And the new clients would come in with their friend's name on it. And Susie sent me to you, or Julie, I'm a friend of Julie's. And then the other thing I did is I did the Groupons. I started taking them and I thought, let's work this into a win. Let's make lemonade out of lemons. They came in, I would give them the best experience of their life. Like everything from the time they walked in to the time they left, I would walk them out. And when I walked them out, I would say, I really enjoyed our time together. I can't give you the same price as the Groupon, but if you love your hair, what I can do is I normally charge this, but if you stay with me, I'm going to raise you a little bit. I know times are tough to this. And I also have a referral program. So if you let your friends know about me that are also looking at Groupons, I'll do them right off the bat for this price, and this price will stay. I'll lock this price in for us, from here on out. I won't raise you. And this is how the referral program works. I also would have little gifts for them. I just thought, like little samples and things. I would put together bags for the new clients to send them home. And it was just about that communication and that full customer service experience so that when they left, they didn't want to go anywhere else, they like to try to create a connection. And it worked, not saying it worked every time, but many, many times it worked. And I found my books full again within it was less than a year. My books were back to where they were. I'd say maybe 6 to 8 months. I was once again finding my books solid, Some of my clients were still going, then blow dry bars were born, remember, which are still here today. I feel like through that is when, she's a genius, right? She came out with the blow dry bar concept. A lot of my clients would get their color done, and they sometimes would still say, I'm going to go across the street to blow dry bar and have my hair blown out as when you're done with my color. I had to be okay with that. I had to think of ways to get new clients. But then what I would start doing is, if you get a color cut and buy a product today, because we got commission at my salon for selling products, which is great. I said, you'll get a free blow dry. So I started, giving free blow dries if they got a certain amount of services in one day. So those were things that I did at the time. And most of those clients, like Casey said, even now that I've moved and I'm in corporate side working with you lovely people, I still I'm getting messages from clients from the ones that I got from the Groupon, and they were with me in LA until I moved to New York. A very big majority of them became my most loyal clients. And over time, I was able to, give myself little raises with them and increases, and they were always fine with it.
What I love here, everyone, is that you've got these, sort of a juxtaposition of reality that happened back in 2008. Yeah. You've got, you're very, sort of, I don't mean average in a bad way, but your average salon experience on the East Coast in Florida with Casey, salons that are, in Florida, again, beautiful. I always think of sunny Florida whenever I think of Florida. Yeah. And then you've got the other side where it's, more your high-end salon, Alfredo's in Beverly Hills, very affluent people coming in and clearly making an income off of doing hair that is probably in like the top few percent, just a do a reality check for our viewers here. So Casey, I know you did many of very similar programs, which you talked about, and the referral programs, and some hair for free. I would ask that, right now, situation is that, which could have been the situation for you then, is that the hairstylist may not be able to even fathom doing hair for free because they maybe they don't have the financial means to sustain themselves, right? So how would you recommend somebody manage bringing, making sure clients who may have financial struggle right now, getting them in to, as to your point, helping them feel beautiful and sort of making that connection through this time while simultaneously being able to financially support themselves? What would you recommend for that?
Oh, you saying that, it brings me right back because I was in that boat. We as hairdressers make money with the people that are in our chair. And if they're not in our chair, then we're not making money. So, it wasn't maybe it was a financial risk. Let's put it that way. I guess that's the easiest way for me to sum it up. It was a financial risk for me to do that. But I looked at it as if I could do their hair and build that relationship with them, or I could do nobody's hair. Either way, I'm making no money. So it was worth it for me to, figure out a way to buy the product or to, put it on a credit card or work with my salon owner to, can I just use, this bottle of Shades EQ 08N and I'll pay you back. But, it was honestly me and my coworkers and our salon owner sometimes sharing color inventory because we couldn't afford to, because we were all broke essentially, to be honest with you, because we had no income. But we had combined, we had a pretty good, color inventory because we were booth runners. So we, provided our own product, and it was a group effort. But I've said this a lot, but it all goes down to the communication, because I think for me, the way that I was able to make this a success was setting realistic expectations and talking to my clients about the short-term versus long-term result from this. I let them know that I loved them and I was here for them and that I was absolutely willing to work with them, but I would set a limit on it. I'd say, I can do it for free this time, or I can do it for a discount this time, whatever their situation was. And actually, let me take a step back. It wasn't as if I called all of my clients and I was like, hi, so I'll do your hair for free. If you want to come in, just let me know. It was something that I offered if the client said to me, I cannot come because I can't pay you. Then I would talk to them a little bit more, not ask any deep prying questions, but just try to kind of understand where they were at. And then I would offer, okay, well, if I did your hair, can you come in and I'll do it? But, it might be, to Alfredo's point about the experience, I still gave them a really nice experience, of course. But sometimes they didn't want the blow dry because they were like, honestly, I just care about the color.
Yeah.
So it was about like setting those expectations and letting them know, okay, so let's see where we're at in like a month. Next time you're ready for your hair to get done, call me. And then there was also a reintegration program, I call it. So I transitioned clients into, like Alfredo was saying, to paying their normal full price over a period of time. And so it wasn't such a shock to their bank account. Another thing I did is we did payment plans. So we would spread out the payments. Maybe I did their hair for free, in January, let's just say. But then in April, once they were starting to be able to pay again, we would tack on a little bit to each appointment after that so that they would pay it back in payments from what they didn't do before. So it was just all about setting those expectations, though, so that nobody felt like, so I didn't feel like I was getting taken advantage of. And so they didn't feel like they were taking advantage of me, because they were also very conscious of that.
Yeah. So okay, a couple of good nuggets from there that I just want to highlight. One is the communication. So just making sure that we communicate with our clients, which we've said, and we keep saying, many people, every stylist that we have on any one of our lives continues to stay connected with a client. That's the number one thing. I think that, we talked about it earlier this week, whereby we've always sort of been the one that they sit in the chair and they tell us everything, probably more than their partner. And so they might need us more, even on an emotional level, even more than a hair level right now. So staying connected, doing those. Now we've got the technology to do FaceTime consultations, etc. And then the other thing it made me think of was your sort of, I'm going to call it a layaway plan. And the only why I know that is, my mom was in the industry as well, and we struggled. And I remember every summer going to this kids' clothing store and picking out clothes for the school year, right? And they would hold the clothes, and my mom would do this layaway plan. And once she could finally pay them off, we would get the clothes. It's going to make me a little sad. She did so many great things just to take care of us, but. So honoring, finding out where the client is when we go back, when we come out of lockdown and open the doors, where is our client right now from a financial perspective? What can they do? In some cases, they'll be able to just come in and do their normal service and pay the normal rate, but there will be some who may not be able to. You don't want to go not or just assume. You want to reach out to them proactively to find out where they're at and help explain how you can implement some of these things that you've both been talking about in order to get them back in. Now, if, let's say, you happen to, have a clientele that were mostly waiters and waitresses, right, who aren't working right now, and so let's call it the majority of your clients actually can't pay, and you're going to implement a layaway type referral plan. How do you personally maintain your finances? How do you sustain yourself? How would you suggest that these stylists sustain themselves? And I'm going to go a step further and ask you, what would you have done differently before or going back to being a stylist or after that crash that you wish you would have done before?
Oh, so many good questions. I don't even know where to start. Well, I guess I'll start with what I think I would do, or what I know that I would do differently. And I think your average person, right? I mean, maybe not, maybe I'm just crazy, but a lot of people, they get money and then it like burns a hole in their pocket and they want to spend it, especially when they're young and like 21, right? So I think one of the challenges with any sort of industry, I'm not even just going to say the hair industry, but I'm going to say any industry where you get a consistent income every single day, then you kind of like that part of your brain that relates to maybe like long-term, at least for me, long-term planning or saving doesn't really work, or maybe it just wasn't turned on in 21-year-olds casing. But I think about it now, and we get paid, once a month, once every 2 weeks, and corporate world, and so it's much more strategic, So I think my mentality being a young hairdresser at 21 was I was just making money every day. I had cash in my pocket. I was just going to town, right? So I wasn't saving very well. And I was fortunate enough at that time to be living with my mom and spending some time with my then boyfriend, kind of bouncing back and forth. So my personal living expenses were pretty low. So I was very fortunate in that sense. But a lot of my clients are college students. They were those waitresses, they were those waiters, and it's not easy. I mean, it's like my heart hurts because I feel for myself, I feel for everybody, I feel for everything that we've gone through, I feel for the industry, and it's like, because it's like a catch-22. You need to get the clients in and work with them, but then they don't have money, and if they don't have money, you don't have money. So how does that work? That's, I mean, honestly, to Alfredo's point about the referral program, that's where because at the same time that I was working with my existing clientele, I knew that I was going to take a hit as far as like, because there were some people, like you said, Alfredo, that couldn't come back, or, that chose to, go somewhere else because they couldn't afford your services anymore, or whatever their situation is. So at the same time, I was simultaneously building my clientele again through industries like teachers and schools and things like that weren't affected by this crisis. And so I had a similar referral program to Alfredo's, but we called it the 50-50. And how that worked was, I'll just use bulk numbers for easy math. So let's say, Sherry, you're my client and you refer Alfredo. Great. Alfredo gets 50% off. Yeah, thanks, guys. So Alfredo would get 50% of his first service off. You'd get 50% off. And then you would get 50% of what he spent off of your next service. So to kind of illustrate that, let's say Alfredo spent, his service was supposed to be $100. Now he would pay 50, and then you, as the referrer, Sherry, would get 25. So people were able to refer people, and I've found that, a lot of people, myself included, are very motivated by money, especially when they don't have any. And I've noticed, your story about layaway just made me, and Alfredo, your story about the referrals reminded me of this time when I was in middle school, I believe, and I wanted to go on this school trip, but my family couldn't afford to send me, and we couldn't, with the travel and the hotel and the food and everything. But there was this incentive through the school to where, like, if you sold tickets to a fundraiser, every ticket that you sold would count towards your trip. I hustled the hell, out of every single teacher in my school. I got that whole thing paid for. Because I wanted it so bad, and I knew that if I didn't do this, that there was 0% chance for me to go. Yep. So I used that kind of mentality and that experience to, if people can't pay, but I bet that they would know somebody who can, somebody who wasn't affected by the industry. And if they can now get their service paid for, through that referral, then that will allow them to get their hair done.
I would love to add to this, because I'm listening to you, Casey, and it's reminding me of, first, I think it's important for people to know that I made no money my first 10 years as a hairstylist. So by the time we got to the crash, because I don't want people to have a misconception that if you work in Beverly Hills, it doesn't matter where you work, I was a broke hairdresser. I did clients for free. I sat at the front. I never left the salon. A lot of the ones that went and had lunch and shopping and hung out with their friends were the ones that either left the industry because they couldn't understand why they never got busy back then, because there wasn't social media. I was like, I'm going to sit in the salon, be available for that walk-in, even if not one comes in. And there were a lot of days that I didn't do one client. In the beginning, I would just sit and wait. So it took a long time to build to where I got. But I love what you said about the 50% off, because I tried a lot of different things before I found my niche of what was going to work for me. That was one thing I did. New clients, 50% off. So I was like, oh my God, and I did get clients from that as well. And a friend of mine, I want to share, it wasn't me, so I don't want to take credit for this idea, but what they did, because I had a friend that worked in Orange County. For those of you that don't know, it's south of LA. It's a little bit more suburban, different demographic a little bit where he worked in a city called Norwalk. Anybody? Yeah. And what he did was he went to the schools, and his clientele was different than mine, and he put flyers in the schools of giving like $75 for a color and cut to all the universities in the area. He would go down to different cities around and go to all the universities and junior colleges, and he would put up flyers with like his phone number, like what people do for houses, with his phone number on like little tags of paper to tear. And he also went to the hospitals for the nurses, and he would do specials. So if you're a student or a nurse, and he ended up becoming a 6-figure stylist back then, which is a lot of money now, is a lot of money then. by doing that. And it was something he continued to do even after the crash. He then moved to even more south in San Diego and built a whole new clientele that way. So, I think in situations like this, it's really becoming a little, that business mind, kicking it in and just really thinking about what kind of clientele you want to attract, and what ideas that you can bring to market yourself. And now with social media, and in this instance, I think there's even more ways that we can do that and can get the word out about whatever it is that we want to do to rebuild.
Excellent ideas, both of you. I think there's a couple things that I glean from there. One is treating your business like a business, and being able to look at it as how am I going to hustle to get clients back in or get new clients? And then how am I going to have some sort of plan to not let every penny I get burn a hole in my pocket, and sort of save away for that future rainy day, if you will, because we never know when something like this is going to happen. Back when I was a hairstylist, I was given the recommendation to open a Roth IRA. That's a Roth IRA. It's an independent retirement account that's for somebody who's more independent, like a self-employed worker. So I would recommend that to any of our hairstylists, is find out. And I did contribute a lot. Listen, I also liked to spend money, and I clearly like glittery things. So how do you just sort of chip away and have something for that proverbial rainy day? The other thing that, Alfredo, you had said something that made me think of outside of just running your business like a business. It'll come back to me.
Was it about not having clients for the first 10 years?
It was actually it was an idea that I had just based on what you said about what your friend used to do. Because right now we all have, rightfully so, because it was working, we've all been completely independent on using social media for gaining new clients and communicating with our clients. However, based on what you just said, I'm wondering if a good idea would be to go back to basics, right? Because to me, social media, while you're active because you're actively posting and you're using hashtags, etc., it's still more passive than the hustle that Casey was talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe it's time. An idea could be getting back to flyers, postcards, heading to the places where people are going to have a little bit of cash that you can offer them a financial incentive in order to come in and look beautiful after the lockdown is over, and going back to basics a little bit. So what we also know is during this time, because we've seen it on social media, is that some clients are taking to doing their own hair, and we have given some advice that if you are continuing your communication with them on a regular basis, that won't come as a shock to you. But if you're not, then it might come as a shock when you finally communicate with them and either have your pre-consultation during FaceTime, or you end up getting them in your chair. So what would be some ways that you would recommend, Casey, to talk to your client who's maybe taken matters into their own hands while they've been on lockdown?
For me, I'm just trying to think. I mean, I understand. First of all, I guess I'll start there. I am very fortunate, I love to have my nails done. I'm fortunate enough to where I do them myself, so I am not affected by the salon shutdown right now, but I'm putting myself in that mentality of, what would I do? Because how I feel about having short nails. It's like a very emotional, I would freak out. So I get it. 100%, I'm right there. But I also, it's not up to me to judge somebody for what they need to do in that moment to make themselves feel good. I was telling you earlier about my story, about how I came into this industry. What I didn't tell you was that when I was in college to become a doctor, I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. And I
Ooh.
wanted to change the way, and the reason why I chose plastic surgery is because I wanted to change the way that people looked and felt about themselves. Like, and I more than anything wanted to change the way that people felt. And I know that no matter what procedure that is, whether it's cosmetic, whether it's reconstructive, whatever that is, whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, I'm here for it. It's all good. It's not my life to live. It's yours. I'm not going to judge you. So I think I take that same approach, thinking of people who may, be compelled to do their own hair in this time. And, it's not preferred. I'll say that, by professional hairdressers, of course. But just like I would never judge somebody for receiving a cosmetic surgery procedure because it makes them feel better, if that's what you need to do and you have no other resources, to go to CVS and buy a box of hair color, you know what? I will be here for you when you're ready to come back to the salon. And if you mess it up, call me and we'll figure it out. And it's all good.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, we know that they're going to take matters into their own hands, but I think I'm just going to keep going back to what you hit on in the very beginning, which is communication, communication, communication. And I can't remember which live it was, but we were talking about the fact that you could potentially be as busy now as you were in the salon if you kept the appointments that you had and did them via FaceTime. Yeah. And so if you think about it, right? So if your client comes in every 6 to 8 weeks, which is normal, and you have short hair by which you go every 3 weeks. But let's say it's 6 to 8 weeks. So you have your initial appointment asking them, what are you freaked out about? Is there anything that's concerning you? Yes, I usually get a blow dry from you, Alfredo, once a week, and I have to do these calls on webcam, and I'm going to look horrible now. What do I do? And that appointment time is then spent, okay, you shampoo your hair, and let's go through this. This is what you're going to do, or show them how to braid it, or show them how to put it up. Great. You know what? Let's pre-book your appointment for 6 weeks, and let's see, are we going to do this via FaceTime or Skype again, or are we going to have the ability to do this live? So then in 6 to 8 weeks, whenever their appointment normally is, then you're finding out either okay, now you've got some regrowth, right? And you're really freaked out. Are you okay? Here's a root spray option. Here is, if it's that bad, if you're feeling sort of nervous about it, then are there other options I can walk you through, but keeping that appointment time and just doing it via FaceTime or Skype. We didn't cancel all of our meetings because we're working from home. In fact, I think there's more. But, we took it to a means by which we could still work. And I understand hair is different, but if you keep those appointments, you'll know. Now, on appointment number 2, you're like, okay, it's growing out. You've got some length. Do you want more of a stretched root look? Do you want to go back to blonde? Do you want to be even more blonde? Do you want to try pink? I hear is the new color everyone wants to try.
Right, I'm hearing that too, yeah.
So I think in that, if that were the situation, you wouldn't have to worry so much about how to manage them doing their own hair, because you would have known and would have helped them to do their own hair, right? You would have been part of what got them there. So if anyone watching hasn't done it yet, then book your appointments right now for all of your clients for your FaceTime or Skype appointments, because as Casey and Alfredo both said, that this entire thing is about communication and being there along all of the steps of the way. I'm going to ask for a final thought on communication and clients and getting through this from you first, Alfredo.
So with everything you just said, I love it. Communication to me is should be the theme of everything we're doing right now, especially to support our clients. And people have been asking me to your point about the FaceTime consultations, and it goes into what you were saying about, going back to basics, even, if you will, with the nurses and the schools that we talked about, and then the way there's social media. People have been asking me about communication. Like, Alfredo, how best should I just put it on my Instagram that I'm doing FaceTime consultations? Should I email my clients? Should I text them? And I tell them, you should be doing all of that. You should be doing all of them. we should be emailing our clients. Hopefully we've set ourselves up that way that we have that line of communication. If not, hopefully we have their phone numbers. We can send text messages, phone calls to hear from our clients. What I'm hearing from hairstylists that are keeping those lines of communications and setting timelines for that is every time the client's like, you care about me so much. It means so much to me that you're reaching out to me. Just the fact that you're asking me how I'm doing and how my hair is, asking me for a screenshot or asking me if I'd like to do a FaceTime consultation, that means the world to me. And it lifted, like I was having the worst day or I've been depressed, this really uplifted my spirits. That's something that's going to create, if it's not already, a lifelong client. So my final thought would be, every single way that you can be communicating with your clients right now and each other as hairstylists, to check in with each other, do it. And that would be my final thought.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alfredo. And back to running your business like a business, having the contact information for all your clients. My hope is that everyone's doing it. In my mind, they all are. So let's hope they're using that contact information. Casey, final thoughts from you?
Oh gosh, so many. I love what you said, Alfredo. Taking it back to basics, number one, but also communicate with them. But I am a personal, maybe this is taking it back to basics because I'm taking myself back to 2008 when Instagram wasn't a thing. Facebook had been around for 4 years, and I think MySpace was just starting to take off. No FaceTime, text messaging. Like it was, I don't even know what this year was. Let's get serious. This time period. But, take it back to basics, pick up the phone, if you have their numbers, which I know is not a thing that's common right now. I only have my own phone number memorized and, maybe you don't have your client's contacts or whatever, or contacts, but if you can listen, like let them hear your voice and communicate with them and be more than just something on the screen. Now, that doesn't mean that if in a social media or an email if that's your only way to communicate with them, then by all means do it. But I think right now, when everybody is starving for human connection, we're all like in our little bubbles, that just making the effort to pick up the phone and to call them or to FaceTime them now is just going that extra mile. And I think that's really what it's about in the service industry. It's serving people, and it's about giving them those types of experiences. Anybody can send an email, anybody can send a text message or whatever, but it's, even when people call me right now, I think our society's mentality is, we look at the phone and we're like, this must be serious if, Alfredo is calling me. Because why wouldn't he just text me? So it's, letting them know that they're serious enough for a phone call. So that's what so that would be my first preferred method. But again, I think any communication is better than no communication. And that's just it. Just really be there and be a physical presence for them.
That's wonderful. So communicate. Find out what's going on. What is it that they want? What is it that they need? And serving our clients. Amazing time for the past, I'd say 45 minutes with the both of you. Inspirational to see how you overcame in a very difficult time here in the U.S. Just 12 years ago. And hopefully there's some great nuggets for the community to be able to take back and apply to this crisis. Until next time, signing off from R&B.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Sherry.